When Jesus heals, when God graces us, we become forever changed. And in that transformation, those blinders fall away and you can't just go back to what used to be. Have you ever blindfolded yourself on purpose? Maybe not recently, but when you were a child. If you can ever admit to putting something over your eyes just to see what it would be like, then you know that being born blind is a lot different than pretending. As John's message reminds us, there was nothing to be envious about for this poor man. It's very important that in the story, the man was born with his affliction. He always had a physical limitation, and I'm sure he believed he always would. Despite being blessed with the use of both my eyes, I can very easily imagine myself in his position. I can imagine how deep his despair must have been, how lonely he must have felt, and how overcome with joy he must have been when he was made healed. Before his encounter with God, he would have been destitute, and yet afterwards he would have been overcome with gratitude. This man and his blindness is a metaphor for any of us that can admit to living a life behind blinders. Far too often we get so caught up in our routines and habits that we end up going through life without actually living. I have done that. I have spent most of my life doing what I was supposed to do without even realizing that I was living a life without joy. And having never really known real happiness, I didn't even know what was missing until that unidentified void was filled. See, in the same way that Jesus gave the blind man sight, I was given a daughter. And both of us realized what was missing only after we had been given that. When Jesus heals, when God graces us, we become forever changed. And in that transformation, those blinders fall away and you can't just go back to what used to be. This man could have moved forward with his life. He could have been a totally different person. But what happened to him with that encounter with Jesus was so powerful that he couldn't remain silent. Even for fear of the authorities, he couldn't stop saying what he believed Jesus was, a prophet. This parable demonstrates the real power of faith. When we accept the invitation of a personal encounter with God, when he looks at us and sees us, not just for what we are, not just to accept us, but to love us in spite of all the things we maybe have done wrong, it brings about this power that is unexplainable. Jesus restored the blind man's sight in the same way that God restored me to my wholeness and made me a person that I was happy and proud to be. So during this special time of reflection, when we're called to ask ourselves, have we been living blindly? The other question to that is, if we have been, are we open and accepting to the grace that God gives us?